channel. Thank you so much for showing up for Sunday at Mike's. Yes, we've made it to start of another week. Sunday here at Mike's in Amsterdam. Doing well, doing well. Hope you guys are doing fine as well. I always like to start out by saying I do appreciate you taking your time to watch. Time is a valuable thing. And for you to spend a little bit of yours with me is always greatly appreciated. So thank you so much for showing up tonight. Whether you catch this live or in the rerun, as so many of you do eventually, I do appreciate that, guys. Don't forget to leave a comment. I always like to hear your comments. But whether you're watching this live or in the rerun, I want to say thank you so much for doing so. It really means a lot to me. Let me see how I'm looking here. Looks okay. Yeah, I think I like the framing of this. Works for me. Maybe turn this a little bit. Yeah, no, that's fine. And push this back and move this forward. Sorry, guys, I was running a little late setting up here. By the way, Mr. Watson, good to see you. Mr. Allmark, good to see you. Scott here in the house, good to see you guys. All right, I think I got myself centered here. Um, yeah, I was watching a video about a young guitar player, and she was giving her opinions on whether it was better to have an expensive guitar or to have a expensive amp and a cheap amp or and a cheap guitar, vice versa. And she came to the same conclusion, interesting, that I did. So it's good to see that I'm not that far off. She said that it's better to have a more expensive amp and a cheap guitar. Now, in her terms, cheap, she was talking in the $500 range, which is something that we're going to talk about tonight. It's actually one of the conversations that sparked this thought tonight for tonight's subject. But I find that interesting. I do believe that if you can, get the best amp you can, you know. And again, like I said, 1x12 combo is probably your best bet. But we're going to talk about guitars tonight. It's been a minute since I have talked about this subject tonight that we're going to get into restoration a bit. As you guys know, I had that Flying V in, and it was in great condition for a 26-year-old guitar. Yeah, 26 years old. That sucker was in pretty good condition. However, it had some rust issues, and really was a big thing for me to make sure before I pass that guitar on to my client to try to make it look as good as possible. Also, you get top dollar when you do a little bit of work to make the guitar look good. So I did some restoration work in terms of rust. Uh, I you know I had this grand idea of rebuilding my Squire Affinity with gold hardware. But after my experience with the gold hardware on that 1999 Epiphone Flying V, nah. Especially, not even quality gold hardware, costly gold hardware will wear out in time. Just look at any of the older Gibsons that had that. But the cheaper stuff, it really, when it wears down, it doesn't look great. It looks really bad. And then when you go to clean it out, you realize that it actually sometimes the rust made it look better. It looked better with the rust. And so gold hardware is certainly something that I think that was an idea there for a minute, and I have all the gold hardware here to do it. I just haven't had the time to do so, to put it together. But it's thinking, looking like that might not have been the best idea in the long run. In the long run, but doing that restoration work, getting that guitar ready this week and getting it out was a beautiful thing because it got me into doing what I like to do. And I think one of the things is I'm getting older. You see a little bit of gray there. So I am getting older. That I'm starting to realize and really, really, really comprehend is that with a little bit of elbow grease and knowledge, there are some great deals to be had out there. Scott says, I got the Epiphone Les Paul 100th anniversary that has 24K plated hardware. I hate Chrome. I see. I get cleaning it. Oh yeah, yeah. 24. Yeah. Well, it'll last. If it's plated 24, it'll last you. You won't get anything. But cleaning it, yeah, you're gonna have to use gold polish on that. But at least they made sure it lasts. I wonder if all the 100th anniversaries had that. Anyway, that's interesting. That's a little tidbit that I was not aware of that had 24K. That'll work. Not the stuff on that Epiphone, no. Not on my Epiphone. Not on that Flying V. That bridge was the worst. So basically, I had to take the whole thing apart and all the metal pieces, including the tuners, all that stuff, and I had to think of the best way. And with gold hardware or gold plated hardware or gold colored hardware, you tick your box according to what you got. Um, you can actually you can take away a lot of that gold as well when you're doing some of these things. So you have to approach it a little bit differently. And it inspired me again, like I said, to have tonight's conversation because I think a lot of these videos I do, I consider them to be long tail videos. Long tail videos are stuff that information that whether you're watching it tomorrow or 10 years from now, God willing, it'll be useful information. So that's the kind of deal we're going to have here tonight. If you're interested in restoration tips, if you're interested in trying to find the best bargain, the best bang for your buck in terms of getting guitars, I think I'm going to cover all that tonight. Um, and one of the interesting things is that it's common household goods. A lot of us are lazy in some ways. I'm guilty of it, or used to be, of rushing to the guitar shop to find the guitar polish, which is usually Dunlop or Fender or Gibson. Somebody has one at the shop for sale. Or, any other things that you need to do your basic routine maintenance for the fretboard, for example, maybe guitar polish. And the sizes of these are very tiny. You ever notice how small a bottle of Dunlop, lemon oil is? And quite expensive. Over here, I checked before I got on. That little bottle of lemon oil is going for 26 euros, and that's not cheap. But as some of you are aware, and you should be aware, that there are common household goods that can be had that are in big bottles. I've got an example here of turtle wax. Everybody knows turtle wax. This is famous in Europe and North America. This is the Carnauba turtle wax. Pretty big bottle. Get a bottle this size, it'll last you forever. This is your number one bet for a guitar polish, a maintenance guitar polish. That and of course the right kind of polish rag that you would need, and I have a couple here. I have leather rags and I have microfiber rags. I have a bunch of stuff, but just a basic wax, and you get a big bottle like this. This will wax 100 guitars, or at least your guitar over the course of time. So I want to talk about that too a little bit tonight. I want to talk about basically how this can be done inexpensively and how in the end you can get a great guitar for not a lot of money. Let me refresh over here. For some reason, I'm not getting my chat. We'll see if it comes up here. There we go. Now I'm getting it. Mr. Thornhill, how you doing, sir? Welcome. Welcome, Anthony. Good to have you here. 2XW, would you like to sing some song? Would I like to? Not particularly. If you want me to, I will, if you ask nicely. Um, so, guitars are getting more expensive. And if you're feeling the financial squeeze like I am, everybody is, in one area, whether it's groceries or gas or utilities, buying new isn't really always an option. And even if it is an option, I'd like to talk about why buying new may not be the best option, actually. There is a secret that I have really learned that some of the best guitars out there are the ones that people overlook. Rusty, dirty, neglected, but still full of potential. Now, YouTube is full of videos of guys pulling guitars that are old. I'm using quotations because a lot of it's BS. My good friend Brad, the guitarologist, um, he kind of covered a few of these videos and showed that they were not quite true. Man, two hats in the house. How you doing, sir? Um, but it's out there where there are some authentic ones where guys are giving tips. And I myself, if you remember late last year, I restored that 77 Greco 450. It was complete, it was, toast. And I got it for about 200, including if you throw in the VAT and the shipping, about 300 euros. A little bit less than that, actually, for that guitar. Once I had done the restoration on it, it was worth far more, and I was able to trade it for a much more expensive guitar. But that's just an example, a real life example of what I want to talk about tonight. One of the things I want to talk about tonight, got a couple of things. I'm going to be a little eclectic and be all over the place, but it all has a common theme of saving money and really restoring and reviving your guitar really is your best bet. And these are some ways that you can do it for less. Doing good here, Matty Two Hats says here, cyclones and floods in Queensland, unfortunately. Yeah, I saw that. Um, even over, I was shocked to see that in Long Island, in New York, on the east coast of the States, they're having fires in the Hamptons. First the Pacific Palisades, my neck of the woods, and now the Hamptons. That's interesting. But anyway, I digress. Good to see you're doing well, Maddie. And I saw the other thing that inspired this, which is why it's a little eclectic, but it all ties together. It all ties together. Hang in there with me. Bear with me. I saw an amp manufacturer saying that with the tariffs that are being introduced, they're looking at $1,000 increase on their amp heads. And it's probably Tolex from Canada, parts and and different components from Mexico and China. And we're seeing that in the case of most guitar manufacturers, they've capitulated and they decided there's some ways that they're dealing with it where they do a deal with their dealers and then they absorb a little bit of them, and they don't pass it on to the consumer. But in some cases, in a lot of cases, it's going to be a situation where in amps, pedals, guitars, whatever, you name it, where that cost is going to be passed on to the consumer for sure. 100% we're seeing it. And I'm sure you guys have seen this. I've just come to the conclusion for me that going forward with my, as you guys know, and thank you everybody for those of you who took the time to watch that unboxing video on my regular content on my channel. I do appreciate that. A lot of people have watched that one. I hope you enjoyed it. I did, very much so. But those guitars that I'm bringing in, those are some pretty premium guitars, and I would consider I deal in mid-range premium vintage Japanese guitars. I would like to scale my business up to a little bit more upscale ones. I was thinking, but I began to go through my books and look at things, and I realized that the most profitable guitars were the ones that I had to put a little bit of work into that I could get very cheaply. Fortunately, I have very good wood finishing skills. I've developed soldering and wiring skills. Thank you to Fern for coaching me on that through limiting my mistakes and burns. And I have also got to the point where I can do restoration work as well. Also, nicks, gouges, paint, things of that nature, all the way around. All the way around. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that for putting that out. Mike, what's your opinions on Laney amps? Well, as you know, my main amp, actually I moved it out of the living room. It's not even there anymore. I'm pointing in there just out of habit. It's actually over here, sitting in a corner trying to decide what to do with it. I'm trying to revamp that area with it. So I got rid of the Laney amp. Laney amps is my favorite amp. A Laney amp, the tone of a Laney amp is somewhere between a Marshall and like maybe a box, I would say. And I just really do enjoy them. Uh, all the Laney line is fantastic. Anthony Thornhill, watched your latest unboxing video today. Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate that. Thank you. I love the V. What's a comfortable position to sit and play it? That's why you should ask that, Anthony. When I took the V to my client to deliver it, well, me and the guys were the guitar tech and another guy were sitting there, and we were having that conversation. I was like, I tried, because what you do is you just put that V right, right between your thigh there, uh, you know, but it's kind of a funny angle. It's not a sitting back on the couch kind of guitar, you know. I just have to be honest. So, what's a comfortable position? Standing with a strap. The most comfortable position I found with that Flying V is when I was standing with a strap on it. I bought a Scotty Ian Jackson recently, but I can't get into a comfortable position. Yeah, man, I just have to tell you, for me, I love the way it looks. Once I got that cleaned up, and by the way, what did I use? Another common household, this is from Albert Heijn, which is a supermarket here in the Netherlands. This is just white vinegar. White vinegar, it says in Dutch. Vinegar white. But this product is your number one tool for pennies. You get a big bottle of this, and it'll last you a long time for fighting rust. I took all the parts off that Flying V, and I gave them a white vinegar bath. Now, I didn't do it as long as I would with chrome parts because these were gold parts. Usually, I would go a day, at least 12 hours minimum with chrome parts. Or stainless steel. But with these gold-plated parts, I only went for a few hours. I immediately took them out, and then I put them in a little tub that was full of baking soda. And then I took them out one at a time, and I went to town with them with this. I've mentioned these before. Again, something that you get for this is from Etos. It's like in the States, the equivalent would be like Walgreens or something like that. And this is the four-stappen block, or the four-step block. 4 steps because there's different grades of sandpaper on this. Starting at around 4,000 grit, and then it gets higher from there. And this is €2. Finish it with something like this. Start with the low grade and just start working the edges, working those little pieces of screws, all that stuff, and then give it a water solution bath, and it just comes out like brand new. Again, don't soak it so long with gold plated parts. But what was that? 99 cents for that bottle. 1.99 for that. So for $3, basically, we'll translate it over to US dollars to make it simple. For $3, that was essentially really okay. The baking soda, but everybody's got baking soda around the house. I hope you've got baking soda around the house. You know, under $5, and you can do all of the restoration work that you need to do, and it will do it efficiently for $5. You know, and I really think that okay, for example, you could get a beat up made in Japan Strat these days for around $300, $400 total, including VAT and shipping. If you're not doing the VAT thing, if you're in the States, you don't have to worry about that. Then you're looking at $350. So you can get yourself a made in Japan Strat, beat up for under $350. I think you could go, but $350 would be the tight, even with the VAT, I would say. $350. So if you don't have the VAT, it'd be cheaper than that. You can get them in the $200, $300 range. And, for the cost of about $20 in supplies, you could, so that would get you $370. Now this is versus buying a new Fender Player Strat for $900 plus. So for $370 and some change, not only could you get a made in Japan, but with a little restoration work for about $20 worth of stuff that you get at any supermarket home center, you could do the work yourself. You could restore it completely, unless it's bent. Like if the tuning pegs are bent, then you have to replace those. Tuning pegs are always good because there's a couple of issues that go on there. But if they're okay, they're just rusty, then you can clean those. You can clean those. Bridges, same thing. Are sonic cleaners any good for guitar parts? Well, sonic cleaners are good for rings and stuff and jewelry and things like that. And for screws, you could use it for washers, you could use it for, but it's not going to do it any faster or any more efficiently than white vinegar. And the cost of getting a sonic, get that tub and plugs in, I've seen them, is negligible. I almost to the point where it's just unnecessary if you just bought a bottle of white vinegar. Where would you find that? So he's talking about sonic cleaners. So those are usually jewelry cleaners. So if you go to a jewelry cleaner on eBay or whatever, those are usually sonic cleaners. You put your jewelry in it and it gets rid of all the, especially gold and silver. They use them a lot in Japan. Black Nobody. You never need to change anything other than strings. Well, once you get it set up and get all the rust off of it and make it playable, I agree. Make sure it's wired correctly. I agree. But we're talking about the differences between buying a need some work guitar for cheap, that if you put the work in it, it'll actually be a better guitar than buying new. And this example that I've given between a beat up made in Japan Strat, and I import those all day long. I know exactly what they cost. And about $20 worth of supplies and some know-how versus the $900 plus for a new Fender Player Strat. The $300 guitar, 350, 370 guitar is going to give you great savings, one, and it's going to be a better guitar. It's going to be a better guitar. There's just no question about that. That Tokai that I just had in, the SS50, that's a beautiful Strat. If you guys watch that unboxing video that Scott was kind enough just to link up in there, you can see that one. That guitar can be had in this price range that I'm talking right here, because it's a little newer. It's an 83, so it's not really a vintage guitar, but it can be had for around that price. Would you rather look at that guitar, go to that to that video, look at that guitar and ask yourself, would I rather have this for 3, 4, and some change, or would I want to spend that $900 for, the Fender Player Strat? And I think you would say I'd rather have, the Tokai. If you're sane, if you hadn't had any recent head injuries. Rusty tuners, clean them up instead of buying new ones. Again, the white vinegar solution works on tuners. Just take them off, unscrew them, take them off. Again, if there's do I have a set of tuners laying around here? What do I got in here? Do I have an example of that? I usually like to keep some examples for these discussions laying around, but I've been cleaning. And when I clean, generally, I can't remember where I put the stuff later. Anyway, no, I don't have an example of that here. But, same thing with tail pieces, rusty tail piece, white vinegar. These are good examples. These are tail pieces that were old. This one is a 78 tailpiece, made in Japan. It's got some pitting on it because of age, but this was a complete rust bucket, and the white vinegar solution completely made that. Here's a newer one that didn't have rust, but you can say to yourself, well, the rusty one, if you guys had seen this before, it was a real rust bucket. But instead of throwing it away, I decided to clean it up so that I can use it, and not bad. Actually, for a 50-year-old, tailpiece, not bad. Again, white vinegar did that. So your fretboard as well. You can use, I use, if you have a rosewood fretboard, actually boiled linseed oil is going to, once a year, is going to be great for you. You don't need to buy a $25 bottle of lemon oil. That's really basically for maple necks anyway. You would never put boiled linseed oil on maple neck, by the way, just mahogany or rosewood. And again, you get a big bottle of that. I don't have mine. It's in the kitchen, but under the sink. But a big bottle of that'll last you forever, and that's a once a year conditioning thing that you can do. Again, if your fretboard is filthy, instead of taking it down to the luthier and having him do, because all he's going to do is pull out his, $2 bottle of whatever he uses. He's certainly not going to be pulling out a $25 bottle of Dunlop oil. Most guys I know don't. But essentially, if you have that yourself at home, you save yourself a lot of money. It's a money saver. GRB, how you doing, sir? How you been? Good to see you. Welcome back. Been checking out my birth year guitars, 1966. Ouch, yeah. I'm 1967, so yeah, ouch. Hello, but finding interesting made in Japan 66s from finding them much more affordable. That is correct. You can find really nice guitars. Again, they were making guitars very well in the 60s. Too bad you weren't a 77 guy, because then you'd be in the sweet spot. But then you'd be 10 years younger. We'd be 10 years younger, so that'd be a different thing. But yeah, that's a good point. Pickups, you know, rusty pickups. The rust on the pole pieces of those pickups was pretty bad on that Flying V. That was one of the main things that made me say, hey, I'm gonna have to do a little bit of work on this if I want to get my price for it. Haha, true. Yeah, man, dig that. Uh, and it was worth it again. But pickups are very tricky things because you don't want to use steel wool. You don't want to use any kind of abrasive material, super abrasive material at all anywhere near your pickups because they will pick up the fine particulate from the steel wool. It's a magnet after all, and it's steel, so they're going to attract. And if you use any kind of wet sanding paper, some people have suggested, that's moisture that you're introducing into those pole pieces. And, then you could really end up with some serious problems, underneath. So it's a tricky thing. So what do you do? The most painful and time consuming thing, but it works, is one of those. I meant to bring it. I don't want to go get it right now, but one of those dental brushes, or not brushes, it's a little dental tool. It's very small with almost looks like a mini toilet cleaner, and you use it to clean between your teeth. Those things with a little wet, not super wet, not damp, but just damp enough, but not super wet, with a little bit of baking soda. And you have to go with that over each one of those pole pieces, just working each one of them with that abrasiveness of the little bit of baking soda, no moisture there, and you can wipe it off, and you're not getting any kind of metal particulate or anything like that. But you do each one of those pole pieces like that, and it works. Does it take a crap load of time? Yes, indeed, it does. It's not as bad as taking stickers off. That takes time, but which is another thing. If you find a guitar full of stickers, fear not, because those can come off as well. I've talked about that before in our last discussion on restoration tips, but that works. Not a lot of baking soda, just enough so it has enough of abrasiveness with that dental tool, so you can. And the dental tool is really tiny, but it's small enough so that you can just get the area of that pole piece without scratching the plastics around it, and it works. Magic eraser work. Yeah, I know guys who use a magic eraser on frets. So yeah, I guess so. People think restoration is expensive, but in reality, you can bring a guitar back to life for way less than you would pay for a brand new one. And I cannot stress that enough tonight. You can get old guitar restored and for far less. I think that's a kind of a no-brainer. It's like a no-duh. The key is knowing when to fix, when to replace, and where to find cheap parts. Now, I'm not going to talk about parts too much because I guess this is kind of part 3 of this discussion tonight, because in part 1 before in a live stream, we talked about parts. Then we talked about some restoration tips. Tonight, I'm going to finish up by talking about a few more here in a minute. But I started out by saying that with my import business, I wanted to scale up, and I've been considering getting, slightly more expensive guitars, old vintage guitars. But again, sitting down and looking at it, the reality is is that the margins are far better on vintage guitars that I get for cheap and that I do the restoration work myself. The margins on those are fantastic. So much so that I'm shifting now that I have a lot more confidence doing restoration work, general restoration work, and wiring, the whole shebang. The only thing that like I said I won't do is set a neck. That's something that I have Fern do. Fret leveling, the whole shebang. Now that I feel confident with my skills to be able to do that kind of work, then I'm probably going to shift not towards the higher end guitars, but you're probably going to see a lot of restoration stuff come through here coming up. A lot of stuff I'm going to be really looking for the vintage guitars that are a little beat up, got some problems, because as you know, that's not what I've been buying. I've been looking for the best of the best, the ones that are just look like that somebody literally bought it at a shop, put it in a case, put it under their bed for 50 years. Those are the ones that I generally like to get, and I will get those when they come up at a good price. But I'm going to buy more beater up, more fixer ups, because the profit margins on there are far better, and I can get far more of them. I can get quite a 7, 8, 9 of those going at a time if I look around. So there's that aspect of it. If you want to get into a guitar import business such as mine, one of the things that you could really seriously considering doing with that, or at least a part of that business, is bringing them in and doing restoration work. Because again, like I said, if you can do that work yourself on a budget, then your margins on that guitar will increase. Something to think about. They're basically sandpaper and bleach. Yeah. So rust removal for cheap, again, white vinegar, lemon juice too. Lemon juice is citric acid, so be aware of how citric acid would interact with a bicarbonate, for example, but that could be to your advantage. Some chemical reactions, basic simple ones like those, I'm certain you learned those, when you made your baking soda volcano, can be helpful in the cleaning process. Steel wool, different grades of paper. Hold on here. Yeah. So here I have silicon carbonate paper. Some of it's waterproof, some of it's water soluble, different grades. Like for example, here I have 3,000 grit paper, and this pack goes all up to 44,000 grit. Starts at 360, goes up to 4,000. Again, this right here for the fine work, something like this you can use for your bridges, your saddles, for your tuners, stuff like that. Also for repair work for scratches, or the basic prep work for scratches in your paint or dents or things like that. But really learn how to use this. Learn about wet and dry sandpaper, and learn all those skills. And I think that's something that you'd be like, oh man, I put a dent in this. You'd say, okay, I can repair that, to the point where unless you really looked at it hard, it would look all right. So rust removal for cheap. Again, I use this also, not just this, but I also use, basic, you can get this anywhere, sandpaper, different grades. Actually, you can't get this here. I had to order this. You can't get this in the Netherlands. This higher grit. The highest grit they have is like 1,200. But anyway, you get that stuff, and you can go to town on rust. You can go to town on rust. 4-gauge steel wool, yeah, which is basically that's like You know Brillo pads, so baby, here you can get the Brillo pad type stuff that comes in a roll. And you cut it. It's 40 steel wool, and that stuff is great also for getting into small places, little small pockets. It gets in there really great. Do not put it anywhere near your pickups. Don't no. But if you got all your parts off and you're doing them, away from your pickups, pickups are down the street, in a movie theater watching a movie while you're doing the rest of the parts. If you do that, not that dramatic, but you get the point. That's okay. But steel wool is a great one. I have a big roll of it, and I cut off a piece of it as I needed. I bought that big roll for nothing, for pennies. And again, a great cleaning and polishing tool. Microfiber cloths also. Toothpaste. Toothpaste is a great cleaner. Toothpaste will get rid of swirls in your paint. But you didn't know that. Dish soap is a great thing. I do a final rinse in a little bit of dish soap. A little bit of dish soap. A little Doxit. If you guys know, do I have my can of Doxit here somewhere? One of these spray cans over here, can of Doxit. For scratchy pots. If you got a scratchy pot, chances are a little bit of Doxit, and you're good to go. Spray it, and you don't even have to take it apart. You spray it in the joints, and it's good to go. 9 times out of 10. Okay, 8 times out of 10. Unless you bought a Harley Benton. 8 times out of 10. And that's really all you need for scratchy pots. And in most of the guitars that you get that are going to be in the used department, they may need that. And that may discourage you. A scratchy pot, I don't want to buy this because I don't want to get in replacing pots. Dox it first. Dox it first. Toothpaste clean my foggy headlights. That is correct. You guys would really be surprised what toothpaste will do. So yeah, for the same reasons on the wood, for the same reason that it'll do for your guitar. Again, guys, and this is stuff that you have. I hope for your loved one's sake that you have a tube of toothpaste sitting around the house somewhere. But if you're working on a guitar or you're doing, your headlights lamps, to keep the fog off, yeah, that's your best friend. It's one of your best friends and cheap. So, get a can of Doxit. Again, yeah, I think that'll run you about 12, 13 euros. So they're like $10 in the States, something like that. Or is it the other way around? Anyway. And I think you'll find that to be probably a remedy to most of the issues that you're running into most secondhand guitars. I had to use the Doxit on the pots of the Epiphone. The Flying V had a scratchy tone pot, and I doxed it, and immediately within seconds it was fine. I didn't have to replace the pot. Cheap replacement parts, we've been through that. Again, that was part 2 of this series where I talked about parts. So no need to go over that. Just go back and watch the live stream regarding that. Lemon oil, masking tape, and linseed oil if you have mahogany or rosewood fretboards. And all of those can be had for under $5. And that will cover your from maple, rosewood, mahogany. Don't know how it would do on some of the more funkier hardwoods that Harley Benton uses for their fretboards, wood, but you could experiment. I'm pretty sure it'd be all right, but certainly for less than $5. Don't ever buy the Dunlops or any of those things, guys. That's you're paying for the name. It's just you're really paying for the name on it, and the quality of it, I'm sure, is okay, but you can get the same quality out of something that you could find in an automotive section. For example, for example. Um, Now, a lot of people assume that restoration needs expensive tools or professional help, but in reality, you can do most of it yourself. Look, if a guy like me can do it, you can do it. Most of you guys can do it better, and most of you guys are doing it, and you are doing it better. But if you aren't doing it, then I encourage you to take these tips tonight and maybe think about it. Again, tools. You can get all the pair tools that you need. Here's a very famous one that works on just about everything, the Gibson multi-tool. You should have one of these. Um, Again, I got a chance to use my new wire strippers. I'm super happy with these because prior to that, I was just, kind of using one of these the old-fashioned way. To have one with uh, different gauges of wire on it has been a great help and very inexpensive to have. Still smells like motor oil that they use to lubricate it. But parts, files, I've always talked about getting files, stuff that you need to do your frets. Um, I'm waiting for a new thin fret file so I can finish the frets on my parts caster. They're 95% there, but there's a file, a fine file. Fern has one. I could ask him to borrow his, but I don't want to do that. I'd rather have one of my own. And they're cheap, again. Find it on eBay. Don't buy parts you don't need, by the way. That is one thing that I didn't mention in that conversation we had that night about parts. Don't buy parts that you don't need. Don't look at a new used guitar and say to yourself, okay, I'm going to replace the tuners and then I'm going to do the pickups and then I'm going to do the bridge. No, don't do any of that. Well, it's rusty and it's dirty and, it does look gross. Well, you know what? Clean it up. Clean and fix first before replacing. If you can clean it and repair it, I've had bent tuners that I was able to fix, repair to the state where it was usable. And there's just things that you can do. Don't buy parts you don't need. Buy parts as you see them. Save your parts. If you're having parts swapped on a guitar, don't say to Luther, he'll say to you, hey, do you want those parts, by the way? You say, hell yeah, I want my parts. Don't say, oh, no, that's the old parts. I don't need them anymore. You keep them. Because he's just going to use them for something else. He's going to have some cat come in and say, oh, well, it needs this. But, I just happen to have one some guy didn't want. And then he's going to charge him for doing the work on it. You see how that works? Keep your parts. By the way, don't overdo the cleaning. Harsh scrubbing can ruin plating and finishing. Not just the finishes. Not just heavy scrubbing, hard scrubbing, but also over soaking in some of these solvents. Be aware again of the way that they will interact depending upon the material that you're soaking it in, the material that you're soaking. Again, with gold plated hardware with the vinegar, I would half the time that you would do with chrome, for example. Look at a guitar and know what's worth restoring. There are some things that you may want to keep the rust on, like, for example, the screws on the plate of your Strat or your Les Paul, whatever it is that you're restoring. Because you may not get all the other parts 100%, and if you can kind of balance it out, it kind of looks like it should. It looks like relic, though that's a real relic in this case. But, I've done some cases where there's some things I couldn't do anything about, but I matched the other parts around it in order to give it more of a relic look. And I got compliments for that. So you got to play with that as well. Don't overdo the cleaning, by the way. Know what's worth restoring. Some guitars are money pits. a warped neck, you can't do anything about that. A guitar that the frets are completely shot, you don't want to be. I wouldn't touch a fret job. And a fret job, it's just if a contractor comes to you and says you need a new roof, you're talking 10 grand. If you have to do a fret job, you're talking $300. That's just the basic all the way across the world. I've lived in 5 countries in my lifetime, and those figures have stood the test in all of them. So you don't want to get in. So again, fret jobs, you don't want to get into that. So know what's worth restoring. Unless you can do a fret job, and you can do it cheaply yourself. Watch out. Watch out. The whole point is to save money, not waste it. So before you start replacing every part, try cleaning and fixing what's already there. Is the point of this. I'm literally putting my money where my mouth is by, taking in a lot more of vintage, still 70s Japanese guitars, but, they're the ones that the Japanese shops won't buy because they don't want to put the work and the time in. So they linger in the secondary market. And there's quite a few of them out there that I passed on before because I don't feel like doing that work. But you know what? I was being lazy because I was literally passing up on money because again a little bit of even with the VATs and the shipping that I have to pay, a little bit of elbow grease, I have found that those are some of my most profitable deals. The whole point is to save money, not waste it. So something to think about. Now, some of you guys out there, are you currently working on a restoration project? Do you have any restoration projects that you thought you'd like to get onto? I'd like to hear about it. Cheap Squires, made in Japan guitars, anything solid, and you're going to get solid, results. And again, if it's solid in the first place, if it started out solid, you can get it back to, it was a crap piece of, Firefly. I'm gonna stand by it. If it's a crappy guitar, $150 guitar, it doesn't matter what, it's always gonna be a crap. You'll restore it back to its crappiness. I'm restoring this Firefly back to its original crappiness. Maybe that's a little unfair, So, restoration isn't about perfection. I've talked about that here. There's some times where you just want to get it to a point where it just looks better. Instead of 10 pounds of rust, you knock it down to 5. But it's really about making a guitar playable and enjoyable again. It's really about making it playable and enjoyable again without busting your wallet, without emptying your wallet out. So, and again, these are household goods, stuff that you can get at the grocery store, stuff that you can get at the automotive store, stuff that you can get at the beauty supply store. And if you know what you're doing, parts, tools that you can get from, hell, even Temu. Temu tools, I really don't see where you could go wrong with that. So even Temu, I could say you can get your tools from for cheap. So, these are, and everybody should have one of these. This doesn't work just on Les Pauls. This works great on Strats and Tellys as well. So there's that. Let me catch up here, guys. Paying for the name, kind of like Gibson. Yeah, it's exactly. Good point. And welcome to the chat. Dan M, nice board. Thank you, Dan M. It is my recording board. I can't do the fractals and I just can't do it. I like analog sound. Scott says, I'm consistently restoring my house. It's a mansion, but it's like something the Munsters would live in. Well, yeah, I did that kind of work too because my father bought a bunch of apartments, and my brother and I, we did, some restoration work, plumbing, things like that. And then in college, in order to, during the summer times, I earned enough money for the following semester. I had to do, drywall, you name it. So it's a lot of fun, but hard work. I did the opposite of a restoration on my Tokai, Les Paul Gold Top, heavily reliced it. Yeah, well, that's another thing too. Is that relicking, I'll accept somebody doing their own relicking themselves. It's just I can't phantom paying new prices for somebody made a guitar really nice and then they took it out back and whacked it with a bunch of chains and then they're going to charge you more for it. Then anyway, you guys get my point on that. Doing it yourself is cool. Hi, would you rate my guitar playing? Well, if you send me a link, not only will I, but everybody else will. So yeah, no problems with that. So again, you guys, I'm always my channel is I'm good. I'm good on the $25 bottle of lemon oil. I don't need that because I have alternated things around the house that I can use in order to fix that up to cover that base for way cheaper. And I hope that learning these skills uh, and applying them, you can get some pretty cool guitars if you do that kind of work yourself. And that then you could even relic it from there. You could do a lot of things from there. Just my idea, my suggestions, my thoughts as we draw to a close here this evening. Um, what's coming up this week? There may be a few things in my regular content this week. I have a little bit more time this week, a little bit of breathing space. So we shall see. We certainly will be doing the live streams. I got food poisoning last night. I consider myself celebrating by going to my favorite bakery and getting myself a cream puff that I like. And I got food poisoning from that bad boy. Without any question, that's what it was. So I woke up this morning and just tore up. And the fact that I'm sitting here tonight and I did a whole hour live stream attests to to test not in this case my testicular fortitude. In this case, it would be my digestive fortitude. Because somehow I licked it. It was terrible. It was mouth streptolopicus. So you can get over that within 8 hours or so. But it sucked. Hit me around 5:30 in the morning. But I'm better. More than why it would be let me tell you something. It'd be a cold day in hell before. I have a rule from Singapore. Because Singapore is like, when I lived there for 5 years, that's like, food poisoning central in some cases. And if I went to a place and I got food poisoning one time, I never went back to that place again. And as much as I like that bakery and walk by it quite often, I'm afraid they lost a customer. It's because it's been warm here. It's been unseasonably warm here. And these folks here in their refrigeration processes and storage methods, let's just say that, it ain't the greatest up and down the supply chain, unfortunately. But I am happy to be here tonight. Didn't think I'd make it. Picked up a 92 cheap Samick, a Blackie Strat. Was a mess. Did my first real maintenance cleanup setup. Sweet, oh my. Yeah, again, there's some great ones out there. The first one that I'm considering buying is a Korean Squire. I passed on it before, but I see it's still up before. It needs some work. But it's the kind of restoration work that I could do and turn it around and make it, as long as I get it at the right price. Again, I can get these and fix them up myself if I put in my labor per hour, it's a lot cheaper than Fern's. So there is that, and I can make a better margin with them. My whole thing this year is how to improve the margins in my business, and one of those things is going to have to be buying a lot more of guitars that normally I would have passed on. So there's that. You guys benefit because you will get to see all that as they come through, and I will share the work that I'm doing with you. I want to thank you guys for showing up as always. You guys always support me. You're always great to me. You're always just the best audience that a guy could possibly wish to have. Scott, thank you so much for moderating. Not too many bots tonight, so not a lot of work for you, but thank you so much. Maddie says, I found no matter how many guitars someone owns, usually a couple will become the favorite ones, and mostly that's right. I read a guy today, he was talking about his guitar collection, HH Strats. Because now that I have an HH Strat, I read articles about them. It's just a thing. And this guy was saying, I've got all these other Strats and all these other guitars, and it's my HH Strat that he put together himself is the one that he reaches for. So yeah, absolutely. I have a 92 Korean Fender Squier Series Strat, even though the body is ply, it's yes. Yeah, those are ply bodies on that one. I thought it was a basswood on those, but no, it's ply. Those are ply bodies. And that's the reason I'm trying to get it cheap. But even so, fixed up, if you can get it cheap enough with the shipping and everything, there's some money there to be made. We'll see. But stuff like that, guys. But anyway, thank you guys so much for showing up. If you don't hear a peep from me between now and Wednesday, I'll get something going, I hope. But if not, I will be here for Wednesday Night Hump. Thank you, guys. You have a good evening. Have a good beginning to your week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.